Commander Elena Torres stood at the viewport of the EFS Hyperion, watching the distortion waves of hundreds of human warships dropping out of FTL. The combined fleet of the Earth Defense Force represented humanity's greatest achievement in space warfare: sleek, deadly vessels armed with fusion-powered mass drivers and quantum-shifted shield arrays. It was supposed to be unstoppable. She was about to learn how wrong that assumption was. Multiple quantum signatures detected, Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from his sensor station. They're not matching any known patterns. Torres turned from the viewport, her dark eyes narrowing as she studied the holographic display at the center of the bridge. The Nexus ships appeared as crystalline structures, their geometry seeming to shift and flow in ways that defied conventional physics. They had appeared 3 months ago, bypassing Earth's outer defense networks with technology that made humanity's best stealth systems look primitive. "Battle stations," she ordered, her voice steady despite the weight of commanding humanity's largest combat fleet. "All ships, maintain formation Delta. Remember your training." The first shots weren't fired with conventional weapons. Reality itself seemed to twist as the Nexus vessels released waves of quantum disruption that turned space into a maze of probability cascades. 3 human destroyers simply ceased to exist, their possible states collapsed into non-existence. "How the hell are they doing that?" Rodriguez shouted, his hands flying over his console. "The laws of physics. They're not breaking them," Torres interrupted, understanding flooding her mind. "They're using them differently. All ships, switch to temporal shielding. They're attacking through probability manipulation." But it was too late. The human fleet's defensive formations, designed for conventional space warfare, meant nothing against an enemy that could alter the fundamental nature of reality. Ships didn't explode, they simply shifted into states where they had never been built, their crews relegated to possibilities that never materialized. Torres watched in horror as the mighty Earth Defense Force was systematically erased from existence. The Hyperion's quantum sensors registered the deaths not as explosions, but as probability waves collapsing into null states. "Send the signal," she ordered, her voice hoarse. "Protocol 0. All ships, full retreat. Get word to Earth, we've encountered something beyond our current ability to fight." As the surviving ships of humanity's greatest fleet fled in disorder, Torres remained at her post, recording everything she could about the enemy's tactics and technology. The Nexus vessels didn't pursue, they didn't need to. In less than 40 minutes of combat, they had demonstrated an insurmountable technological advantage. But even as the Hyperion jumped to FTL, Torres was already thinking about the next battle. She had noticed something in the sensor readings, microscopic fluctuations in the Nexus quantum fields when they interacted with human neural activity. It was tiny, barely detectable, but it was there. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," she called out. "Download all sensor data from the battle and encrypt it. Priority channel to Earth Defense Command, specifically to Dr. Marcus Way in quantum physics. There's something he needs to see." The defeat was total, but Torres had learned long ago that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology or its weapons. It was in its ability to adapt, to study defeat and transform it into the seeds of victory. The Nexus had won this battle with overwhelming technological superiority, but they had also revealed something about themselves, something that might prove to be crucial. As the Hyperion raced back to Earth, Torres began composing her report. The first line would set the tone for everything that followed. "They crushed our first wave, but in doing so, they taught us how to fight back." The war was just beginning, and humanity had always been at its most dangerous when backed into a corner. The Nexus had demonstrated their mastery of quantum mechanics, but they were about to learn that consciousness, creativity, and sheer human determination could be even more powerful forces in the universe. Torres looked at the final sensor readings one more time, paying special attention to those neural quantum interactions. The Nexus might have mastered the fundamental forces of reality, but they had never encountered a species like humanity before. And that, she suspected, would prove to be their undoing. Dr. Marcus Way stared at the holographic display until his eyes burned, watching the same sequence for the 100th time. The moment of interaction between the Nexus quantum fields and human neural patterns played out in ghostly blue light, each iteration revealing something new, something impossible. "Show me the temporal sync again," he said to the lab's AI. "Focus on the millisecond when ship Delta 7 was phased out." The hologram zoomed in, showing the final moments of the destroyer before it was erased from reality. But there, in that fraction of a second, was the anomaly that had caught Commander Torres's attention. The ship's crew, specifically their neural patterns, had created a momentary disruption in the Nexus quantum field. "Dr. Way." Admiral James Okonjo's deep voice interrupted his concentration. The Admiral stood in the doorway of the quantum lab, his uniform pristine despite the chaos that had engulfed Earth Defense Command since the defeat. "Tell me you found something." Marcus straightened, suddenly aware of how long he'd been hunched over his workstation. "Sir, what I'm about to show you, it challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness and quantum mechanics." He gestured to the hologram, expanding it to fill the room. "The Nexus weapons don't just destroy our ships, they alter probability itself, shifting targets into states of non-existence. But look here." He highlighted the neural pattern disruption. "Human consciousness creates its own quantum field, one that briefly resisted the Nexus probability manipulation. Are you saying our minds have some kind of natural defense against their weapons?" "Better." Marcus could barely contain his excitement. "I'm saying we might be able to turn their own quantum technology against them. Human consciousness doesn't just resist their probability manipulation, it interfaces with it." The neural patterns of the crew were momentarily linked to the Nexus quantum field before their ship was erased. Admiral Okonjo's eyes widened as he understood the implications. "Can we weaponize this?" "Not exactly, sir. But we might be able to do something even more powerful." Marcus pulled up another display, this one showing his preliminary designs. "I believe we can develop an interface that would allow human consciousness to merge with and potentially control Nexus quantum systems." "You're talking about connecting human minds directly to their technology?" "Yes, but it's more than that." Marcus brought up the neural pattern data from multiple ships. Every crew member showed this effect, but some were stronger than others. "I've identified specific neural configurations that seem particularly compatible with Nexus quantum fields. If we can find people with the right neural patterns and train them, we could turn their greatest weapon into our greatest opportunity," Okonjo finished. He was silent for a moment, considering the implications. How many people would be compatible? Based on initial estimates, maybe 1 in 10,000. But that's enough. We need to start screening military personnel immediately, focusing on those with experience in quantum mechanics and neural interface technology. Admiral Okonjo nodded, his decision made. "You'll have whatever resources you need. This is now Project Phoenix, top priority, highest security clearance. I want you working directly with our best pilots and quantum engineers." As if on cue, the lab door opened again. Commander Elena Torres walked in, her uniform still bearing the marks of battle. "Doctor," she said, nodding to Marcus. "I hear you've made progress with my sensor data." Marcus smiled. "Commander, your neural patterns were among the strongest we've detected. How would you like to be our first test subject?" Torres didn't hesitate. "When do we start?" The next 6 months passed in a blur of breakthroughs and setbacks. They lost 3 test pilots to quantum desynchronization before Marcus perfected the neural interface. The 4th attempt nearly killed Torres, but she refused to give up. On her 7th try, something clicked. "The quantum field. I can feel it," she whispered from within the test chamber. The holographic displays showed her neural patterns perfectly synchronized with the captured Nexus quantum technology. "It's like I can see probability itself." Marcus watched in amazement as Torres began to manipulate the quantum field, her consciousness extending into the fabric of reality itself. She wasn't just interfacing with the technology, she was becoming something new, a hybrid of human consciousness and quantum manipulation. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Okonjo said, watching Torres master abilities that the Nexus had thought belonged to them alone. "How soon can we start training others?" Marcus looked at his latest data, hope rising in his chest. "The neural interface is stable. With Commander Torres's success as a template, we can begin screening candidates immediately." "But sir..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What we're doing here, it's not just about winning the war. We're about to take the next step in human evolution." In the test chamber, Torres opened her eyes, which now shimmered with quantum probability. "They thought they could erase us from existence," she said, her voice resonating with new power. "Instead, they showed us how to transcend it. The hidden strength of humanity wasn't in its ships or its weapons, but in its mind, in consciousness itself." The Nexus had mastered the manipulation of quantum reality, but they had never imagined that the primitive beings they'd so easily defeated would turn that mastery into a gateway for human consciousness to evolve beyond its biological limits. The counterattack was about to begin, and this time, humanity would bring more than just weapons to the battlefield. They would bring transformation itself. Lieutenant Aisha Patel had always seen patterns where others saw chaos. As a child, she could predict weather changes by watching dust motes dance in sunbeams. As a quantum systems specialist, she could read the probability waves of spacetime like others read books. Now, floating in the neural interface chamber of Project Firewall, she was about to attempt something unprecedented. "Neural sync at 98%, Dr. Wei's voice came through the quantum field. "How are you feeling, Lieutenant?" "Like I'm everywhere and nowhere at once," Patel responded, her consciousness expanding through the quantum interface. Around her, reality itself seemed to pulse with possibilities. "The captured Nexus ship. I can feel its systems. They're not mechanical at all, are they?" "No," Commander Torres answered from the observation deck. "They're pure quantum constructs, maintained by consciousness itself. That's why we could never understand them through conventional analysis." Patel had been one of 50 candidates selected from the global screening program. Her neural patterns showed unprecedented compatibility with the Nexus quantum fields, even stronger than Torres's. But where Torres had learned to interface with small quantum systems, Patel was attempting to merge with an entire Nexus vessel. "Beginning full integration," Dr. Wei announced. "Remember, Lieutenant, don't fight the quantum flow. Let your consciousness expand naturally into the ship's systems." Patel closed her eyes, though physical sight had become almost irrelevant. Her mind reached out through the neural interface, touching the alien quantum architecture of the Nexus ship. It was beautiful, a crystalline lattice of pure probability, each node a doorway to infinite possibilities. "I'm in," she whispered. It's like the ship is alive. Not conscious, but, waiting." The observation deck erupted in controlled chaos as sensors recorded the unprecedented merger of human consciousness with Nexus technology. Dr. Wei's hands flew over his console, monitoring neural patterns that defied conventional physics. "This is extraordinary," he breathed. "She's not just interfacing with the ship, she's rewriting its quantum configuration." "Lieutenant, can you access the propulsion systems?" Patel didn't respond with words. Instead, the captured Nexus vessel hummed to life, its crystalline structure shifting with new purpose. Probability fields that had lain dormant since its capture began to pulse with energy. "Full access achieved," she reported, her voice overlaid with quantum harmonics. "I understand now. The Nexus don't pilot their ships, they become them. Their consciousness extends through entire fleets, linked through quantum entanglement." Admiral Okonjo leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Can we use this? Create our own quantum-linked fleet?" "Better," Patel said. "Their quantum network, it's vulnerable to human consciousness. We don't just resist their probability manipulation, we can redirect it. I can feel their entire command structure through the quantum field. Torres stepped closer to the chamber's observation window. Show us. The air in the chamber shimmered as Patel demonstrated her newfound mastery. The Nexus ship's quantum field expanded, touching other systems in the facility. But instead of erasing them from existence, it enhanced them, merged with them, transformed them. This is what they never understood, Patel explained, her consciousness now spread across multiple systems. They evolved their technology to be an extension of pure logic, of mathematical perfection. But human consciousness is chaotic, creative, adaptive. We don't just use the quantum field, we change it. Dr. Wei's monitors showed something unprecedented. The quantum fields weren't just accepting human control, they were evolving in response to it. The interface is creating new quantum configurations. Patterns the Nexus never imagined because they couldn't imagine them. How long until we can replicate this? Admiral Okonjo asked, already thinking of tactical applications. We don't need to replicate it exactly, Torres replied, understanding blooming across her features. Each human consciousness interfaces with the quantum field differently. That's our advantage. The Nexus built their entire civilization on predictable, mathematically perfect quantum manipulation. But we'll show them something new, quantum chaos, driven by human creativity. Patel's demonstration continued for hours as she explored the full capabilities of the merged human Nexus systems. She learned to fold space in ways that made traditional FTL travel obsolete, to create quantum shields that didn't just deflect attacks but absorbed their probability and redirected it. But the true breakthrough came when she accessed the ship's quantum communications network. Through it, she caught glimpses of the Nexus civilization itself, vast arrays of crystalline worlds, linked through quantum entanglement into a single, perfect system. Their strength is their weakness, she reported. Their entire civilization depends on quantum uniformity. They've never faced anything like human consciousness, beautiful, messy, unpredictable human consciousness. As the test concluded and Patel's consciousness returned to normal spacetime, Dr. Wei was already compiling the results. This changes everything, he said. We're not just learning to fight them, we're discovering a new form of human evolution. Admiral Okonjo nodded gravely. Begin mass production of the neural interfaces. Commander Torres, start training program implementation immediately. Lieutenant Patel, you'll head our first quantum integration squadron. He paused, looking at each of them. What we learned today isn't just a weapon, it's the key to humanity's next great leap forward. As the others filed out, Patel remained in the chamber for a moment, her mind still resonating with quantum possibilities. The Nexus had meant to erase humanity from existence, but instead, they had opened a door to something unprecedented. The war wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about transformation. And somewhere in the quantum field, she sensed a tremor of uncertainty ripple through the perfect crystalline network of the Nexus civilization. They had felt what she had done, and for the first time in their history, they knew fear. The quantum-shifted fleet hung in the void between stars, 300 ships gleaming with crystalline energy that defied conventional physics. At their center, the flagship Hyperion had been transformed from a traditional warship into something entirely new, a hybrid of human engineering and Nexus quantum architecture. Commander Elena Torres stood in the neural interface chamber at the heart of the ship, her consciousness extended through the quantum field to touch every vessel in the fleet. Around her, 20 quantum pilots maintained the intricate web of probability that kept their ships phase-shifted between possible states. All ships report quantum synchronization complete, Lieutenant Patel announced, her own consciousness threaded through the fleet's tactical systems. The Nexus still haven't detected us. Their quantum network shows no signs of disturbance. They're not looking for us because they don't believe we can exist, Torres replied. A fleet of quantum ships controlled by human consciousness? To them, it's a mathematical impossibility. Dr. Wei's voice came through the quantum link, his consciousness monitoring the fleet's neural interfaces from Earth. Remember, you're not just commanding these ships, you're about to rewrite the laws of probability itself. The moment you engage the Nexus, reality as they understand it will begin to break down. Admiral Okonjo's quantum signature pulsed with authority through the command network. All ships, prepare for phase shift alpha. Target the Nexus quantum hub in the Arcturus sector. Commander Torres, you have tactical control. Torres opened her quantum-enhanced senses, feeling the fabric of space-time flex around the fleet. The Nexus had built their civilization on perfect, predictable manipulation of quantum probability. But humanity had learned to do something they considered impossible. They had learned to introduce chaos into the quantum field itself. Phase shift alpha in 3, 2, 1. Reality twisted. The fleet didn't just move through space, it moved through probability, emerging into a state that the Nexus quantum networks couldn't predict or detect. They appeared in the heart of Nexus-controlled space, surrounding a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with quantum energy. Nexus Quantum Hub detecting multiple anomalies, Patel reported, her consciousness swimming through the enemy's communication networks. They're confused. Their probability models are failing to account for our existence. Now, Torres commanded. All ships, execute Protocol Phoenix. The human fleet released its quantum payload, not weapons of destruction, but waves of conscious probability that rippled through the Nexus quantum network. Where Nexus quantum fields demanded order and predictability, human consciousness introduced possibility and change. The crystalline hub began to shimmer as conflicting quantum states battled for dominance. The Nexus responded with their traditional tactics, attempting to phase the human fleet out of existence. But this time, something different happened. They can't erase us, Patel exclaimed, triumph in her voice. Our consciousness is creating quantum states they can't collapse. We're not just fighting their technology, we're changing the nature of reality itself. Torres felt it through the quantum field, the moment when the perfect crystalline network of Nexus civilization began to crack. Not from physical weapons, but from the introduction of human consciousness into their quantum systems. Where they demanded mathematical perfection, humanity offered infinite possibility. Multiple Nexus vessels approaching, one of the quantum pilots reported. They're attempting to establish quantum supremacy over the sector. Let them come, Torres commanded. Show them what human creativity can do with their own technology. The battle that followed defied conventional description. Ships didn't exchange fire, they exchanged possibilities. The human fleet, guided by consciousness that embraced chaos and change, created quantum states that the Nexus couldn't predict or control. Their perfect system began to unravel as human minds introduced variables their probability models couldn't process. The hub's quantum field is destabilizing, Patel reported. Their entire network is experiencing cascade failures as human consciousness spreads through their systems. Admiral Okonjo's voice carried new urgency through the quantum link. Commander Torres, we're detecting massive quantum fluctuations throughout Nexus space. Whatever you're doing, it's affecting their entire civilization. Torres expanded her awareness through the quantum field, feeling the ripples of change spreading far beyond the battlefield. The Nexus hadn't just lost a military engagement, they were experiencing something that threatened the very foundations of their existence. This isn't just about winning a war, she realized, speaking through the quantum link to all ships. We're showing them something they've never seen before, the power of consciousness that embraces uncertainty, that thrives on change instead of fearing it. Through the quantum network, she felt something unprecedented, Nexus quantum systems beginning to respond to human consciousness not with resistance, but with curiosity. Their perfect, crystalline thoughts started to show the first flickers of chaos, of creativity. Hold positions, she commanded. But don't press the attack. I think they're trying to communicate with us. Not through their quantum networks, but through the chaos we've introduced into their systems. Dr. Wei's consciousness pulsed with excitement. The quantum readings. Commander, I don't think we're just changing their technology. We're changing them. As the hybrid fleet held position around the destabilized hub, the Nexus quantum fields began to pulse with new patterns, irregular, unpredictable, almost human. The counterstrike had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, not by destroying the enemy, but by introducing them to a new way of existing. Send word to Earth, Torres ordered, her mind already racing with the implications. Tell them we've achieved more than victory. We've achieved first real contact. The war wasn't over, but it had transformed into something else entirely. Humanity hadn't just learned to fight the Nexus, they had shown them a new way to evolve. And in doing so, they had set both civilizations on a path that neither could have predicted. In the quantum field between the fleets, possibility itself danced with new potential. In the quantum-shifted space above Earth, the crystalline form of a Nexus diplomat vessel shimmered with possibilities. Unlike the perfect geometric forms of their previous ships, this one pulsed with irregular patterns, its quantum field dancing with newfound chaos. Watching from the observation deck of the Hyperion, Commander Elena Torres could hardly believe how much had changed in the 3 months since their counterstrike. Their quantum signatures are different, Lieutenant Patel observed, her consciousness gently touching the edge of the Nexus ship's field. There's creativity there now, spontaneity. They're learning to embrace uncertainty. Dr. Wei stood beside them, his neural interface allowing him to see the quantum interactions that normal human senses couldn't perceive. They're evolving. Our introduction of conscious chaos into their quantum network didn't just disrupt their technology, it sparked a fundamental change in their civilization. The diplomatic meeting had been requested by the Nexus themselves, using quantum communications that bore the distinctive marks of human influence. Their perfect, crystalline language had begun incorporating elements of human unpredictability, creating new forms of expression that neither species had imagined possible. Admiral Okonjo entered the observation deck, his uniform bearing new insignia that represented humanity's quantum evolution. The Nexus representatives are ready to begin. Commander Torres, Lieutenant Patel, you'll join me in the quantum conference chamber. Dr. Wei, we'll need you monitoring the neural interfaces. The quantum conference chamber was a new creation, designed to allow direct consciousness-to-consciousness communication through the quantum field. As Torres settled into her interface pod, she felt her mind expanding into the shared space between species. The Nexus consciousness that met them there was unlike anything they had encountered in the initial conflict. Where before there had been only rigid mathematical perfection, now there was a symphony of ordered chaos, the beginning of something new. We have been transformed, the Nexus consciousness communicated, its thoughts carrying hints of emotion that would have been impossible months ago. Your species has shown us something we had forgotten in our pursuit of perfection, the power of change itself. Through the quantum field, Torres shared memories of the war, of humanity's desperate innovation, of the moment when consciousness and quantum mechanics had merged to create something unprecedented. The Nexus responded with their own memories, millennia of evolution toward perfect order, and then the shock of encountering human chaos. We sought to erase you because you represented a threat to the perfect system we had built, the Nexus explained. We could not comprehend that imperfection might have value, that consciousness might transcend mathematical certainty. And now, Admiral Okonjo's thoughts carried the weight of humanity's future. Now we propose something that has never existed, a merger of our approaches to reality itself. You have shown us that consciousness can guide quantum probability rather than being bound by it. We offer an exchange of knowledge, a sharing of evolution. Lieutenant Patel's consciousness pulsed with sudden understanding. You want to learn chaos from us, while teaching us your quantum mastery? A cooperative evolution of both species? Yes, the Nexus confirmed. Already, our civilization changes. The quantum chaos you introduced has sparked creativity we had thought lost. Some of our younger ones now shape probability through intuition rather than pure calculation. They are experimenting. Dr. Wei's excitement rippled through the quantum field. And the changes we've observed in human consciousness, the expansion of perception, the ability to manipulate quantum states, this is just the beginning, isn't it? The beginning of something neither of us could have achieved alone, the Nexus agreed. We offer not peace through compromise, but growth through synthesis. Torres felt the truth of it in the quantum field itself. The Nexus were no longer the rigid, perfect entities that had nearly erased humanity from existence. And humans were no longer bound by the traditional limits of consciousness. Both species had taken the first steps toward something greater. There will be challenges, Admiral Okonjo cautioned. Our species are fundamentally different. That is precisely why we must proceed, the Nexus responded. In our perfection, we had become static. You have shown us that true evolution requires the embrace of uncertainty. And perhaps we can show you how to channel your chaos into forms you have not yet imagined. The quantum field between them pulsed with new possibilities. Torres could see it, a future where human consciousness and Nexus quantum mastery merged to explore realities neither species could reach alone. The war had ended not in victory or defeat, but in transcendence. We accept, Admiral Okonjo announced, humanity's decision rippling through the quantum field. As the diplomatic session concluded, Torres remained in the quantum space for a moment longer, touching the edges of what they might become. The Nexus had intended to erase humanity from existence, but instead, both species had been rewritten into something new. Dr. Wei's consciousness joined her in the quantum field. You know what this means. We're watching the birth of two new species, both of us evolving into something beyond our original forms. Not two species, Torres corrected, feeling the truth of it in the quantum possibilities that danced around them. Something else. Something that carries the best of both, human creativity in Nexus mastery, consciousness and quantum mechanics, chaos and order. Lieutenant Patel's thoughts carried a note of wonder. They crushed our first wave, but in failing to erase us, they helped us all transcend. The quantum field pulsed with affirmation, human and Nexus consciousness intertwining in ways that defied traditional physics. The war had ended, but evolution, true evolution, guided by consciousness itself, was just beginning. In the space between stars, probability itself seemed to smile at what was to come.